we're good.
Now we're good? Okay, good morning. We'd like to call this work session of the Board of Education to order. Today is August 5th. Adam, will you please call the roll?
Sorry. No, you got me messed up. Mr. D.
Yes,
Ms.
yes.
Casper.
Here.
Ms. French.
Here.
Mr. Horton. I got
Here.
out of order.
Sorry,
I'm back.
apparently someone doesn't work for all of us. Brains are not working.
We're like-
I need a motion to approve the agenda.
That's where I was. So moved. Second.
Take feelings on just like that today.
All right. Any discussion?
Same paper.
Yes. I have a question. I see that we are going to be voting tonight, today. And I think we agree that we don't vote during work session, so I don't know who made the agenda.
So we normally do not, but if you remember in our last discussion and in my update, because of the timing of school, we need to make sure to revise the cell phone policy so that we can then do the student code of conduct. We have a few policies that we need in place to start the school year. And so because of legislation timing, we just want to make sure that we take the action in this meeting so we can start the school year as clean as possible with policies and student code of conduct. So this will be a rarity.
Okay, so now I have, my follow-up question is, I don't know, it was an agreement or it was in a policy?
It's just an agreement
Yeah,
that we
it's not
try
a
to keep
policy.
action off. It is not a policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
We only do it if we have to. We've done it maybe once or twice, but
Because I remember we turned down.
We were
Calm
trying to
down.
keep that off as much,
Yeah.
much as
Right.
possible, as
we
much
said
as
only when it was necessary, like in an emergency.
And we knew with the timing of the cell phone policy, because we've done all the work, cell phone policy to craft our own. And then we knew with the legislation coming that we weren't gonna have time to do two reads at a time.
So this will be an anomaly, absolutely.
Good. Any other discussion? Adam, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
to the agenda.
Yes.
Mr. Horton, Ms. French,
Yes.
Mr. D,
No,
Ms. Casper.
Yes. You please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Schaefer is running a few minutes late. She will be joining us. All right.
So as Isaac mentioned, we kind of have two halves to this meeting, right? It is not our kind of normal cadence for session. So the first is just going to be kind of our normal cadence for discussion. First half of that will be master facilities plan. As you know, instead of having those meetings, we've now put master facilities plan into our planning meeting for discussions whenever possible. And the rest of those meetings will continue to be subcommittee meetings. And then the other part, prior to taking action, we will have an in-depth discussion about each of those policies that are up for agenda, up for approval. Just to make sure that we understand kind of the background, the context, address any questions and all those good things. So essentially those policy conversations we would have had last Friday are coming into this meeting. So to start our morning off, Elevar and our whole new team for our construction manager at risk is with us. So we are going to start that conversation just like we would in our regular master facilities cadence. As you know, we have Skanska here, our new construction manager at risk. I'm very, very excited about that. We went through our kind of normal process for interviewing, looking at candidates for that, and we feel we absolutely have the best partner in that, and are very, very excited. They are committed. They have been to board meetings since, God love you, probably like 2017 or something like that. It's been a decade of board meetings to get here, but we're very, very excited about the partnership. And I do truly think, not only based on their presentation, but their backgrounds, they're very, very invested in Lakota local schools and partnering with us. You have parents and you have community members, and you just have a really strong love for our community that I think that you will see play out with a wonderful partnership with Elevar. So excited to have them here this morning. We don't have to officially approve that, but we will be bringing that up at our regular August 18th meeting, just so that the public hears that partnership that we're very, very excited about. And he'll be in the board meeting anyway, because it's been impending forever. Just want to make sure that you know that we do have that step finalized as well. Elevar has worked with them in different capacities and different projects, and just had wonderful things to say about them as well. So I think we have a very exciting team to be able to work with. In our last master facilities discussion, we started to really start talking about sites of locations. And before we kind of delve into that conversation, Adam and I went to speak to the Westchester trustees a couple weeks ago in their evening meeting. And we received some feedback. I shared that with you a couple of times in my updates, but I think it's just important to recap that because I think sites are a big part of that conversation. So just a little context before we delve into that. The big buckets, and then we actually had a follow-up meeting with just the administrators as well at Westchester. And I think the big discussion is the location of schools. There is a concern that in the decommissioning of buildings, that they seem to be losing some facilities, particularly a junior high building and then an early childhood building. And they feel concerned that the exiting of buildings does not match where the voting populace is or the size of our district is not reflected because those remaining buildings will, not all, but several of them will be in Liberty Township. We do have some data just from our last conversation that about 62% of the expected voters who will turn out do live in Westchester, right? And so just coupling that with the feedback and concern about the location of buildings. And I think that location of buildings is not only the physical locale of those buildings, but also the concern about transportation. That if we start moving buildings into Liberty Township, how long does that put a child on a bus? Mr. Zink did a really nice job in that conversation of explaining that we're all very much aware of that, but I think we're looking to consolidate bus routes as much as possible, right? And be very, very efficient in our bus model. So while we might have buildings that may be a little bit farther away, if we can be really expedient and efficient with our routing, maybe a bus only has to do a pickup and a drop off twice instead of 3 times, which then would reduce that bus time or seat time. But that was the number one concern, I would say, is the site locations and the time on the bus. The second was there's a financial piece there, certainly, that they discussed about with taxpayers. I do think we have some clarity that we can provide around that to help alleviate maybe some misconceptions or maybe some awareness. And then last but not least, in our breakfast with the trustees, we had some really good conversations, and I think they were very candid that they were aware of some of the facts and the timing. So for example, having the bond issue versus the future potential operating levy, they weren't quite clear that that's a now or later kind of option. So I think we can improve on our own communication and engagement of that. Also, one of the things that I asked very directly in the trustee meeting, there was the comment made that our buildings are fine, that our buildings seem to be of good quality, particularly of reference was Freedom Elementary. And I did ask the question, I said, is that a collective viewpoint of the trustees that our buildings are in fine physical shape and don't need to be remodeled? And the question was, the answer was, I'm not sure we really know. Because we have not been on site in a lot of those buildings for quite some time. And so I think, again, the onus is on us in our communication plan and engagement plan to really think thoughtfully about where we do those so that people can experience our buildings, to really highlight maybe in some of our social media opportunities and our website opportunities and communication about what is the current state of our buildings. Because if you don't visit them each and every day, you might have a misconception of what those really look like. So the big takeaway, I think, from after those breakfasts, not only their questions, but just opportunities to refine our communication, really hone our communication, and really be super, super clear about where are we, where do we want to go, and how do we get there, either in the now or later model that potentially could be. So with that, I think again, focusing our conversation back, the discussion at hand is about the sites, right, of those locations. We do, we were slated to talk to Liberty trustees tonight, but we're going to be rescheduling that because I think without the clarity of where those sites are going to go, it's hard for people to wrap their mind around how does that affect my child? How does that affect my 20 square feet? How does that affect my transportation patterns? So I think that is the discussion at hand. I know Tom's team has the enrollment data, the tenure data that we've been looking at. And so I think there's some ongoing discussion to get those sites finalized. Really, I think by the end of September should be our goal, if not earlier, because that at least that gives us a month for people to wrap their heads around about where those decommissioned sites will be and then where those new buildings will look like. Because I do think parents or empty nesters or just community members do need to see that on a map of what that really looks like. So Tom, I'm going to turn it because I know we had a conversation yesterday about some of those enrollment studies and some thoughts on those sites.
Yeah, great.
Can we use the screen?
Absolutely.
Great.
We hope.
No guarantee.
I need to move.
I can probably.
I can share my space, Johnny, kind of helpful. No. That's a grounds for a meeting, because finding new architects, you spill my coffee, right? I think
I'm not close to you, but.
I think doesn't like to sit next to me when
No,
I
we
have
are drinking
coffee.
coffee.
Never ends to noise.
Break shift in the morning. Yeah.
Sorry.
Let me have up here what I have.
Yes.
That one has.
As always, can you guys?
Am I in any way?
Yes.
Everybody see, need to see that to me.
Good morning. Whiteley did a unbelievable great presentation on here we are for discussions. I will say that really excited. I invited myself to the Westchester administrative meeting, but I left excited because there was clearly intent for the district have an open discussion. Sites. What Adam had first mentioned when we met as a collective body with both townships, the county was represented, was to say, hey, we would love to look at other sites that might be available. What we're hearing, we heard from Butler County, they really didn't have anything large here. They have hundreds of sites, but they're all very small. And so that wasn't going to be an outlet for us. And then what we've heard from Westchester Township is similar, that they really don't have any specifics, but they do have some needs and some interest in the discussions with the school board regarding the properties that are selected, and then the properties that are vacated, what happens to those, and how they could perhaps use those to accommodate some of their growth and their needs as they look at things in the future, the fire station, how to locate and serve their community. So I was really excited. They also pointed us in a direction which indicated that there's private partnerships outside of just the townships. So over the next couple of weeks, we will engage in a few of those, again, to provide best information. So what this is really just kind of an indication of where we are today. As Dr. Whiteley had mentioned, the goal is over the next month and a half to really define these locations because the voters will want to know. Some school districts have gone to the vote without those specifics. And it's just missing a big piece of the puzzle for them, for the community. So making this decision over the next month and a half is going to be important. But there really, when it comes down to it, as we look at where the township lines are, where the division between the west and the east side in terms of the population, how the district has shifted or students have been placed, there really comes some clarity in terms of some of the choices that we have. And we wanted to kind of just highlight those. First of all, if our goal is to get a balanced east-west division, which is one perspective, we're designing this for the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, but always knowing that there could be continued growth. Things like the Milliken Exchange that really bring more growth than the demographers have been able to predict. So we want to make sure that we accommodate future buildings, future expansions as we go through the building process. So I wanted to highlight on page 1, we've broken out essentially 4 sectors. And we're going to go through very quickly today, just some initial thoughts that we're receiving that we've collected. First of all, on site A, we're going to cover first. It really, what we're highlighting, Tony, if you want to go to the next page, what we've done is created a site selection criteria. This is has been discussed with the civil engineer, Kleininger's and Associates. They have been working with the district for 20, 30 years and are very familiar with the sites. They've given their assessment. We've the rest of the design team has also provided input, and it really comes down to pocketing and making some clear selections, and that's why we've got it down to 4 sites, site A, B, C, and D, and 2 of them there really aren't choices, but perhaps as we continue to engage the community, there might be some options that we open. So what we've done is give it a numeric analysis. We've looked at the constructability of the site, how easy will it be to build as we continue to operate an elementary or other buildings on the site. Safety issues, always paramount, and environmental issues, parking issues, traffic, site accessibility, that's getting to the buildings. Then we have traffic within the circulation patterns within the sites. Then we look at available utilities, making sure that it doesn't cost too much to get just the basic utilities to the site. Most of the sites we have are presently being used. Utilities isn't a very big determinant in terms of what's which site is best. We have an item in terms of population growth, and we still are trying to working with the district to input that. Usable, so we right now have just ones presently in each of these. We have usable land area, which is essentially how much some of the sites are a little hillier than others, so how much grading, how easy is it, how much land do we have to develop, and then area for fields. So those are the criteria. So what I'd like to do is go to site A and kind of break it down.
And just, excuse me.
Yes.
Yeah, I know this is very important to me, I believe to everybody. The growth, the population growth trend is a 1. What do you mean by that?
Well, we've given, right now, we haven't completed the input and all the data. So right now, this is just a snapshot of where we are. So right now, we haven't, that hasn't been factored in completely. That's what we're working on over the next couple of weeks to make sure that that's factored into these sites.
Okay.
But I think in our discussions, you'll find that it's on the back of our minds and definitely.
Yeah, so because I know that's one of the biggest reasons we're doing this. But if the scale is 1, I think it's a concern.
Well, it's a 1 to 10. Eventually that'll be filled. We'll we'll put a numeric evaluation on that once we have all the data. So then you'll see the numbers change and perhaps some clarity, further clarity.
Tom, remind me, scale 1 to 10, which is good and which is,
The highest number is.
okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah,
the scale is
That's
right.
what I thought too.
And you'll also notice that they're color coded, the higher the score, the darker the shade of color, which, you know, I'm a graphic guy, so it helps me a lot.
Green is good. I got you. Dark green is
So in the
good.
population growth, and 10 would be extreme growth.
Yes,
Yes.
That follow, okay.
that's what.
But if you look at your total scores, they wouldn't be impacted. None of, even if you got a 10 on one versus a 1 on another, it would not change the hierarchy that's currently there, it appears.
Yes.
I mean, other than like a couple that are within 2.
Right, now, one of the feedback we are asking is, does it need to be weighted differently? So does it want to have a higher level of scoring? We could go 1 to 20, 1. So it doesn't always have to be out of 100. So,
Yeah, so and we did weight them, the total score, the highest you can get is 100. So if we needed to weight, safety issues, only a 1 to 10, we can change that, but we'd have to add the 5 to one of the other criteria. So we are fine tuning it as we speak.
let's go back to the overall district map. Because the one thing, I'm just gonna make some general comments regarding the sites and what we have available. First of all, in Westchester Township, we know that there's a large amount of students in what we're showing. We've just labeled Site D, which is on the south east section of your district. And that's where presently you have Adina and Shawnee. And looking at the population, that's highly populated. Those are very popular schools. Both buildings are in a community, not on a very high traffic street. So accessibility to those sites is a little bit more difficult. We have to be a little bit more sensitive as we look at those two. But what we did is we kind of said, okay, that corner needs to be served. And there we have some options. Then we looked at site B, and that's where West Freshman Creekside are located, as well as looking at Heritage. We know that there again, there's a population that needs to be served in that region of the district. We also know that as we labeled Site C, where Hopewell Junior High and Hopewell Elementary, that again is another area. We really don't have a site comparison for that, but one might develop as we continue our discussions. Right now,
Because it's one very large site.
yes, and it's on a good, well-served road. So that is definitely a very good site to look at. And then we jump to Liberty Township, knowing that as the Milliken Exchange becomes a reality over the next 5 years, we know that there's going to be continued growth through the north of the district. And knowing also one concept that we do know is that Woodland Elementary and Liberty Junior High has a wonderful that the district currently occupies, and it's very central to the whole district. So it has a lot of versatility. But in our discussions with Liberty Township, there might be, we're suggesting that there might be an alternative to that site to the north. We don't know yet what that we're asking, trying to investigate. Is there a possibility of locating a school to serve that area, because we know that that area needs to be served, But obviously, it'd be nice if it was more central to Liberty Township. Sometimes we don't have alternatives. And so we always have to look for the best site. So what happens at that point, 10 years down the road, if we have some extreme population increases where the demographers right now have clearly said, we don't take it into account because we don't know if the Milliken exchange is gonna happen. It's hard to measure the impact of it. Although instinctively, we all know and feel that it's definitely gonna bring more development. So how do we and the state look at all of these sites? And we simply have to think about expansion. What are the expansion capabilities for sites that you already have, buildings that you already have? Can Wyandotte, can Independence, can Liberty, can Van Born, Cherokee be expanded, or alternative, either made bigger or an adjacent building located within that site. So part of the program and part of getting LEED certification is always to say, hey, we do need to plan for the future. So that future might be part of already sites that you already, school buildings that you know that you're going to be keeping. So that essentially is a summary of where we are in terms of site selections, evaluations. Now that I have a partner officially on board, and they're also going to be providing additional input, and especially when it comes to constructability, how do we phase new buildings on sites that we have to keep operational. I think all along we've been looking, especially, I think you remember our conversations on the high school sites, you know, and in constructing all the buildings, that making sure that during construction over the next 4 years that we aren't impacting the students that are there. We're minimizing that impact. So how you position the building, how you design it is going to be critical for us. So that's it. I'd love if you have some comments, some thoughts in terms of these sites. I would love to hear it. The more feedback we get, the better we could provide a recommendation back to you.
Did you want to go through any of the comparison?
Yeah, we can. Let's go. Yeah. I mean, like I said, we have two that really aren't. We don't have a comparison site. Johnny, do you want to?
Sure, so just going back to the main map again, this is site A because it landed first on our list. But really, looking at the Woodland and the Liberty site, it really is a fantastic site. I didn't realize that this triangle also owned by you as well. We could consider, even there's the option of getting transportation center. When you take these schools out, there's over 26 acres of buildable land, which is, I don't know if it's not the largest, is it? Might be the largest. So there's definitely, this is a great opportunity to build. And again, to what Tom was speaking to, we are still studying, though, when you look at the map, if there is a significant growth to the north, you've got a void up here. It doesn't make sense to build it here, or question mark, is there another site that's a really fantastic site? But this is a good site. You have good access to it. You can build a nice school and then demolish the buildings and relocate parking and fields as needed. So it's almost 100 acres that I counted. If you look at the black dotted line, is 100 acres. We are looking at how to keep the schools fully operational during construction, but without any interruption. So that one's not really comparison. Site B is looking at Heritage for the freshman Creekside site. And there's, when you look at them side by side, and these are to scale, you can see that the West Freshman Creekside site is significantly larger than the Heritage site. However, Heritage does fall within the Liberty Township versus Westchester, so there's always that fine balance. But looking at the sites just side by side scaled, they're scaled the same. You can see that Heritage is, total site area is 16 acres. For West Freshman is, Creekside is 43 acres. With 6.25 acres buildable on the Heritage and 19 buildable on West Freshman Creekside. Now, it is recommended, Lee says it's 7.5 acres for the scale, so 7.5 acres is what you need total. So either of these sites, you know, at 16 or 43 acres, they're both good options. But just looking at, and the red lines you see, by the way, is the topography. And I apologize, sometimes they print really bright. But, you know, if you see a lot of red lumped together, that means it's very steep one way or the other. So you can see that, and it's kind of hard to see on the screen. But we started looking at, okay, if we were to build, say on Heritage site, where is the construction access? Princeton Glendale, or is it gonna be on Hamilton Mason Road? And then how do we access this so it doesn't disrupt the school? And there are a couple different options as well on the West Freshman site. And if either of these sites aren't used, then what is the proposed function of that site once vacated?
The nice thing about the West Freshman Creekside site is that, as Johnny mentioned, 7.5 acres is the total acreage for state recommendation for an elementary site of this minimum of this size. What that's not necessarily the building footprint. So the building footprint is much smaller. As long as we have at minimum 7.5 acres, then you start to think about, well, what happens with the rest of the site? We've talked about play fields, perhaps more community opportunities. In this particular case, perhaps even opening it up to other development of the site, other opportunities, whether it be a fire station and other community type buildings, would definitely be able to fit on the site as well. So that's very attractive.
Do we know how many acres the current transportation site is? Like the service center?
I can find that information, but visually looking at it, this is 26 acres. I would probably say 10 acres maybe.
Just trying to get a perspective if we wanted to move it. How important it is. Okay.
Then the other aspect is best use aspect for the board to consider. Can some of these sites, if they're vacated, is there one or two that have significant value? And the central, is it, does it have better commercial use than a school building? So.
So this one is not really a site comparison because it is one large site. It's 56 acres. With 31 acres of buildable sites, Hopewell and Hopewell Junior Elementary School. So really this is looking at, is it the north side we want to build on, the south side? Which road do you want to access it from? The adjacent, if you look at the neighborhoods, it's completely surrounded by housing with with two different churches adjacent to it. So again, you've got 56 acres of land that you only need 7.5 acres. So, you know, and when we look at the district as collectively, doesn't make sense to give some communities feel like, hey, you're moving my school out of my area, but what if we were to add some other amenity back, like ball fields or something that they can use? So this one really isn't a comparison. The final one that we looked at, and this one, again, when you look at these sites, there are other sites within the district that are better than Adina or Shawnee. But in order to keep the schools within the neighborhood and keep it, if you remove the schools completely from this area, then, and there's a large population down there, they've got to travel much further. So we don't, when we looked at the map collectively, we want to make sure that the entire district's represented. So looking at just comparing these two sites, Adina is very much buried within a residential neighborhood. And it looks like a lot of twists and turns to get there. And I imagine that transportation, the busing situation might be a little bit more challenging there. So the Shawnee site, there's no direct access from Cincinnati Columbus Road, but it's just a quick hop off of that onto Wendell Drive. And before you hop on here. So there's some topography on that site. It's pretty steep, but when you compare them side by side. So this is Adina on the left, there's 14.5 acres total area. And then versus 22 acres. Yeah, and this is 11 acres buildable area on Shawnee versus only 3 acres on Adina. So when we start comparing A to B, we start looking at not only access to the site, but also site buildability. It appears when we first start delving into this, that Shawnee site is the preferable site of the two. And you can see that once, there are many opportunities to locate the building, and imagine if you can, that, once the building is built, the existing building is torn down, and you've got a nice parking lot drive to the front building. So whereas the Adina site, if you were to build it, you're building it at the very, very rear, which means you've got to go past all that parking before you get to the building, or fields or something that happens up here before you get to the building. So it does make sense in my mind, and correct me, Tom, if you disagree, that the Shawnee site is preferable over the Adina site.
It did score better. There is also, since the Adina is further embedded into a neighborhood, that the benefits of having fields areas perhaps become very attractive. As all these sites, what we always look for are two means of egress, ingress to the site. So as we further develop what the site is selected, we will look at ways we could perhaps tie secondary roads so that we can improve safety. And it's just not a one-way in and out. But this, we know in this area that we need to serve the area appropriately in terms of school. Now, as we have discussions with community members, with other officials, we're finding out that people's perspective or information that they're getting, we really need to be there clarifying. We are going, the district, based on the master plan that the board has approved, we are going towards the neighborhood school concepts. Whereas right now, it's a graded type of, where K-2, jump, and there's a lot of transitions. So it is important to define what a neighborhood school, community school is, and that we make it clear we are moving toward that model much further than where you are today. For people's perception is the buildings in our neighborhoods, we'll call it a neighborhood school. Not necessarily, because your student might be traveling 6 miles down the road just to get to their appropriate grade level school. So that's a really good point that we need to make throughout the
throughout our discussions. And highlight those benefits.
And define that. Because when you say neighborhood school now, they think they're walking out their door and walking up the block and going into their school.
Mhm.
It doesn't necessarily mean a walkable school, but it means that a neighborhood school within, like you said, K-5 will now, that's your neighborhood school. It will now be, you're not moving in 2 years and then another 2 years. It's more of the neighborhood in the building than that's hard to message.
Tom, perhaps I'm oversimplifying. I know you said we have options. But it kind of doesn't really feel like we have options. Right? So what I mean,
That'd be nice.
because what I mean by that is, the Hopewell site is the Hopewell site, right? School's gonna go there, right? The Liberty site, the Woodland site, school's gonna go there, right? So that's 2 of the 4, done. So that leaves West Freshman, Creekside Heritage, and then the Shawnee Adena. But again, and I'm not the architect, I appreciate the topography, like, when you look at it, just pure numbers and size. It looks to me like it's Shawnee and West Freshman Creekside, because regardless of the number of West Freshman Creekside, I do think we want it on the side of the Westchester line,
I would agree.
right? So. Am I, like I said, I know it feels like a decision, but it seems like a pretty this is kind of clear. Is that fair to say? Am I missing?
You're not missing it.
Okay.
The more we delve into, the clearer it gets.
If those numbers are not close, even before the enrollment piece, and then
Right.
when you put the enrollment piece in there, I'm sure they'll spread some more, but, and again, when you just look at pure size. It seems like a no-brainer if that's where they would kind of go.
Well, and the bigger sites, the ease of building on the
Right.
bigger sites, you not as much disruption and.
Yeah, I feel like the only way the Adena Shawnee piece is a choice is if we put a school in a year later.
Yeah.
Because we wouldn't be able to have kids there, and then that's so much disruption that I'm not sure what you gain. What you lose from the disruption is greater to me than what you would gain by
Yes.
doing it different.
So in discussions with, which you're having with Liberty Township, is there an alternative for the Woodland Liberty Junior High site to presently have? And that's a really good site.
It's a
As you
really
all-
good. It's a
I hate to
really
give
good
up,
site.
that's a
It's
really good site.
it's flat, it's just flat and it's
It's
easy to
flat,
get
big.
to,
And I think that the site that the Liberty talks about is that corner of Butler, Warren and Princeton that we used to have. That we gave back. I worry about putting a school there with the Milliken interchange, but it's basically gonna go right through there. And if there's. I don't remember how many acres that is. Does anybody know how many acres that is? Craig, do you remember how many acres that is? I wanna say 10, but I could be lying.
That's about 9 to 10 around that
Yeah.
area. So that's all.
And like Lisa said, a minimum of 7. I mean, it could be a tight site and if Milliken interchange is gonna affect that traffic wise. That could not be. I just hate to give up that Liberty Junior Woodland site. It's such a great site.
When I was thinking if we could find land to swap for. In theory, you would have heritage available,
Right.
right? So could that be? The more attractive thing to maybe trade or swap or utilize differently? I mean, I'm not saying we have to do that at all, but I'm just thinking. That's kind of on a line, which is nice,
Mhm.
right? Not that we have to swap anything, but I was just, like I said, I think. Just that nice plot of land there, the ease of that, the true neighborhood feel around it without being in the middle of a subdivision. The ease of access off of Cincinnati Dayton,
Right.
I think it just has so many pluses. I don't know if that's the one I'd want to swap.
Right. Yeah, that's it.
It also butts up against the Liberty Fields there.
Right.
That are already there. So when you look at what do we do with that land afterwards, there's so much space and we're
So
looking at
much.
field houses and athletics and community centers. That's a great centralized location,
Yeah.
easy access for the community, and it already bumps up against a bunch of already.
Well, that's why I asked about the transportation, if you could even move that,
move
the
that.
heritage or somewhere,
Right.
that opens up a whole. Different span.
And Heritage has easy access there on 747, so.
I think that's something too, that in our discussions going forward for the community and the bond issue is. Not only once we pick the sites, but now we have to determine what we're going to do with the existing sites, because that has become a concern. On Facebook where everything is accurate, about what, Are we gonna have empty buildings sitting on a site, or are we gonna have a
The trust-
demolished,
the trustees ask about that.
a
and I thought,
demolished
yeah.
building?
And Adam did a wonderful job of saying like, nobody wants a building that's just gonna sit there and be a blight on the community,
Right.
right? We wanna make sure that we have a purpose for it. He also did a nice job about explaining, what's the difference between having land in a space and having a school building on it and some of the limitations for that, because they did ask about selling and purchasing
A
and
lot of
things.
that was at the breakfast as well.
So I think that's I think we all want the same thing. I think just really communicating that vision, I think is important. Tom, when we pick the sites, we just pick it internally, or do we have to put that on something and have that approved, do a submission, or how does that work?
There's no process that the state requires you to go through at this point. It really is an internal piece, as we've talked about in a number of meetings. It will be important to provide that information because it is key to the community as early as possible. So I kind of feel like we're back in the Soviet Union days where you have choice A
Yeah.
or choice B, and they're all the same. They look kind of the same. You're right, Dr. Whiteley. There's not that many options to look at this point. And a lot of that is because there aren't other sites outside of these that you already own that have been identified. And with the exception of the discussion of the Site A option, Woodland Liberty site, that is still out there, and you're gonna need to have further discussions to see if there truly is an option. But board has mentioned individually, board members have mentioned that it is important to retain some sites. While other sites might have some commercial value that you might want to realize, it is important to maintain sites for the future growth. Your community is unique in that you have great partnerships with organizations that do maintain fields. A lot of the fields that you have right now on your sites, a lot of them are for community use. So that partnership takes an empty site that you might have, that you might want to hold for future purposes. It clearly helps identify that site as one that could be maintained, operated by the community, some type of joint agreement. So it doesn't put a burden on the district for maintaining some of these sites. So that's exciting piece.
Got a random question. What would the rough ballpark, high level guesstimate, a price point of an elementary versus a junior high new build be? Just with what we're kind of looking at, are they about the same due to the size?
If it's the same number of students, a junior high is gonna be a little bit bigger because those kids get more square feet.
Kids are a little bit, right.
Kids are bigger, right? So
Gym is bigger.
it'll be a little bit bigger just based on the calculation from the state. Probably, an elementary kid gets 112 square feet and the middle school kid might get 140. So it would be, that factor of increased size. of the
Okay.
building.
So spaces, stuff like that. So typically that'll be more expensive cost per square foot. But if you build a small elementary, it's gonna cost you more per square foot than it would be a bigger junior high school.
Thank you.
And have more robust, athletics.
You need
fitness
science
and so
labs
forth.
and-
Yeah, but
In a junior high.
So a high school
Yeah.
student generally calculates about 163 square feet per student. But that is without a lot of the LFI spaces like auditoriums, extra gyms, things like that calculated into it. So a high school square foot per student might be as much as 180, 185 square foot, so significantly more size.
So that was one of the funny things that we took away kind of from the breakfast. I think it made the administrator and the finance officer, I think it made them feel a little comfortable that, you know, we're looking at this as operational. We're looking at this overall, how can we be the most efficient? It's not just, and I told them I can't help it. Every time I look at that overhead map, it's like looking at boundary lines and stuff like that. Makes a difference.
When I thought that was an interesting kind of dichotomy in the discussion of it's too much money, but why are you putting the buildings where you build it? Because it's more fiscally responsible and we're trying to reduce our footprint. Like you can't have both. And that's what we saw in the Fallon survey, right? There is this kind of parent, empty nester, back and forth. The empty nester wants more fiscally responsible. The parent wants, I want my neighborhood school. I want it to feel close. I want it to feel like it's kind of in my backyard. I also think, yeah, just a really, really good discussion. The junior high to me was more of the sticking point than anything of like, we're losing a junior high. We don't have a junior high in Westchester.
Well,
That's
when
kind of,
that's why I hate looking at these overhead maps, because anytime I look at the overhead map, it's like, look at East Freshman and Plains. Yeah, if there was a way that you could get a junior high down there by, or, you know, we talked about a lot of that, you know, it's, when you look at these borders and you see that like Union, in a perfect world, a boundary would be totally a circle, you know, that way you could transport easier and all that stuff, so.
that question did arise of why is it not split kind of north and south? Like we had the last master facilities conversation and we explained the history of that. And I think it was a very eye-opening experience of when you start changing children's high schools,
That's the,
you're gonna get some passion in this community, right? Like people like that they are a, you know, Firebird or a Thunderhawk. That's just how it is, right? When you start changing those lines. Now, could we? Well, yeah, we could. But again, it's trying to find that compromise of efficient, keeping the history, keeping what we've been built on. And so I think there was a realization of like, it's not as easy as just changing the attendance zones. Because when you change the attendance zones, you change the feeder schools to high schools, which then upsets, you know, a domino effect.
and that was a
A lot of
function
change. It's a
that,
lot of change. You're asking for a bond levy for this much, you're building new schools, you're closing schools. Now we're gonna change your.
and it's like the conversations we have, there's things that they say that I go, I never would have thought of that, but I don't work in that world. And when we talked about that, you could tell that was an eye opener for them as well, like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, I understand our townships, you know, trustees' desire for equity, right, but looking at it by buildings and that sort of thing. I think what's been eye-opening in this process is the fact that like, there's not a lot of options because they're not helping us find other locations. And so I think I'd feel differently if they were coming to the table saying, hey, we've got this great piece of land, we're willing to add on, or we're gonna help co-invest here to build something greater. But if they're not bringing anything to the table, I think we're kind of stuck with the land that we've got, you know.
And that was a
fundamentally.
big point we made.
And
That's why we wanted to have those meetings, and
I think what's been clear is that, you know, the community expects us to deliver the needs of the school in the most efficient way possible, not to make some townships happy. And so, you know, I would encourage them to come back to the table with more options and help. I think we've been trying to co-create and would love to see what they come up with. And I understand that there's not land available, but help us co-create a solution instead of just kind of saying, we want this, would be more helpful for us.
So I think our, you know, our next step, which kind of ties to the end of this public conversation, is engagement, right? We've started that engagement piece, and we're gonna be full in it. School starts Monday. I mean, right? That's unbelievable, right? The staff report on Monday for convocation. And I say convocation because that's really going to be the first time, you know, you can't talk about a theme of we are building our future and me not mention the master facilities plan. Now, we're not gonna get in the weeds at convocation, but we will have convocation. And then Adam and I, and perhaps Craig, we're going to have administrator training, just like we did with Gary on kind of the rules of a bond issue and levies. Equip them with kind of the elevator speech and the good talking points to make sure they're informed. Then we will go on kind of the staff meeting trail, meaning we will go to each building and engage with staff and give a presentation and question and answers. We actually worked on a video last week that can then complement that after we do that to kind of be a refresher that we do. We have Finance Fridays in case you've missed those. I think those are really, really good. In fact, I saw a lady the other day watching it on her phone in Kroger. She was watching the Finance Friday going as she was shopping. It kind of made me laugh. But I do think this is going to be the heavy engagement time. We have our parent meetings already scheduled. Betsy's working really collaboratively with our DPCs and our parent councils. I think really just trying to get a push out into the community to get to those homeowners associations, to businesses, to community events. But it's going to be probably, you know, a weekly, multiple week thing to make sure that we're just in front of people and addressing as many questions and clarifying those misconceptions and getting those points right. Not only from a financial aspect, but like a programming aspect of what does that offer us. Kids are coming and we're gonna start sharing that message pretty heavily.
And I think that we have to, as you go to all those meetings you already have scheduled, as you know, walking out of the trustee meeting, we had 3 people stop us and say, where are they gonna be? Where are the new? I
So
mean,
that was gonna be my
we
question.
got to.
After
nail that.
today's discussion, I feel like we're pretty clear on where these are going, right?
It appears to me that we
So
are.
I think that would be very helpful for our communications team, for us as we go to say, you know, we're looking at the Shawnee site, we're looking at the West Freshman Creekside site. We're looking at kind of the Liberty Woodland as a whole, because I think people can wrap their heads around that. They don't need to know the exact location.
Right.
And we're looking at that Hopewell site. If we can, I think at least start that message, and saying, you know, we feel pretty confident. We're not 100% saying with fidelity, but we're 99% there. I think that would help in that messaging, because I do think even staff, parents,
Right.
things like that, they're gonna wanna know. So I think if we can update the FAQ with that, we can build that into our message, update some slides. I think that would help us as we go out to engage in that. Are we all comfortable with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great. So that's a huge, look, we said
Oh
end of
my God.
December and it's like the second
We said
week
it
of
wouldn't be
August, first week
August.
of
Here it
August,
is.
right? All right, so I think that, anything else for master facilities? I do know we have, Elevar is aware as well, we want to visit kind of larger junior high and high school sites to just kind of get some ideas, you know, get marinating and kind of what the design looks like and how that can feel. I know we've talked very heavily about the importance of that junior high build, especially because they are larger, making sure, I'm gonna call it like the Harry Potter model where you have the houses and it feels very more, a little bit more intimate and more collective and more social. So I think just seeing those in a larger scale will really just help us wrap our minds around that. So we will add that. We'll have the engagement trail, but we'll also have the visitation cycle so that we can start doing that. So when November 4th comes, you're ready to go afterwards with designing. Okay. Thank you. You.
All right, moving on to the policy discussion, and I apologize for being late. For some reason, I had in my head 8 o'clock, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait.
I woke up too thinking I was asleep.
So policy, legislation, keeps changing, even right before starting. And so a couple of things before, like I said, we get to the action item of the agenda. First and foremost, just to kind of walk through each thing that's on the agenda, and then we can delve into the discussion. First and foremost, in our current policy, and you have it there in front of you, it's that first policy that you have, 0131. This is the policy that says to do approvals for policies that we need 2 reads, okay? That is not the law. That is just best practice, okay? So the first thing on the agenda that you will see, because of the anomaly of the legislation and the timing, we will rescind policy 0131 for the August 5th meeting only, for this meeting only. Again, this is not a legal requirement to read policy twice. It is best practice. So Julie will make that motion to just rescind this for August 5th only, so that then we can approve the policies that we need, okay? The biggest thing on the agenda is the cell phone policy, but before we even get to that, you will see technical changes to the policy in B. What that means is because we have a new assistant superintendent, Mr. Marshall is in the audience, that changes our compliance officers. Okay, by law, we have to have 2 compliance officers, ideally of both genders, so that staff feel comfortable reporting those. A technical change is literally just a name change. It does not change content at all. It literally takes out one name and puts in one name. So we will do technical changes to a batch of policies to make this compliant for the compliance. Okay, again, there's no content change. I have all those policies that I can reach you affected if needed, and they're linked in our agenda. But again, it is just a technical change for a compliance officer. Again, we need that in the start of the year, to make sure our handbooks and our parents and our staff know who to report to if there were a problem. And then we get to the cell phone policy. So if you remember, and that cell phone policy is 5136. It's very colorful. You will see lots of red, lots of green. It looks like Christmas in August, right?
But-
Um,
Can we talk about something before we then go to the policy? First of all, I don't know I saw this agenda around 10 p.m. because I was busy myself. I don't know when it was set out. But I always want to make sure there's no surprises.
Mhm.
I saw something here that I stay up all night trying, and everybody's sleeping. I don't want to call her down. I don't want to call people that maybe I need assistance, call you to get assistance with. I'm trying to crack this on my own. Even as I'm here right now, I'm even have a good night's sleep because I'm trying to crack this. So these technical changes, which of the policy does it affect that we're
Yeah.
changing today?
technical changes are, and these are all linked in the agenda as well.
Yeah.
It's 1420, and I have a stack here if you'd like to see them, Isaac. It's 1422, 1623, 1662, 2260.
Hold on, 1422.
Yep, Isaac, how about this? How about I give you my cheat sheet? Okay? Here are all the technical change policies, and again, those are linked in the agenda. But really, it is just a name change for our compliance officer. So there's no content changing. We're literally gonna take Rob Vogelman out. We're gonna put Mr. Marshall in. And again, it is for our staff and students' safety so that they know who to report to, or parents if there were an issue in a title situation. So all of those policies,
Okay,
yep, will
So-
literally just have a name change.
so 0511 is not there.
0511. Hold on, I'm getting my titles looking from here. No, that's our last policy. 0511 is enrollment policy. So no, it is not in the technical changes.
Okay, but I think technical changes affect that as well.
No, we're gonna do an approval of that. We're not, take 5111 over here. We haven't talked about it yet.
Okay, all right. Because I see that what we are gonna vote on.
You're gonna vote on 5111
5111
later, but that is not a
But
technical.
it's also affected by.
You're saying 5111, he's saying 0511, so I wanna
It's
make
not
sure
the same
we're
thing?
talking about.
They are,
It's the same thing.
Well, you said one, you had 2 ones and she has 3 ones in the policy. we're
Five.
I
talking
have 3-1.
about.
5111.
1-1, yes,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
Put that over here.
yeah.
Mhm.
But the technical change impacted that one as well.
No.
Okay.
So
So-
technical changes are just that list you have in front of you.
Okay,
Okay, so that is just a name change.
okay, those are name
Yep,
change.
those are just name changes,
Okay,
okay? Then let's talk about, we have 2 other policies to talk about. We have the cell phone policy, which is
Yes.
5136.
mhm,
And then we have admission to the district, which is 5111.
okay,
Okay, so let's talk about cell phone policy first, okay? Cell phone policy first. If you remember, back in last year, the state of Ohio said to us, said to us, go and make your locally controlled cell phone policy. And we did that. We communicated, we
a year.
collaborated, we spent a year, we had community conversations, all of that good stuff. Well, we got it all done. We approved it in April. And in about February, the state said, thank you, but we're gonna come up with our own policy and we're going to give that to you. And they did on June 30th. They approved that on June 30th. They did not get the policy to us till about 2 weeks ago, the first draft. And a little history on that I think is important before we go any further. So, when the policy was given to, when the legislation was given to Neola, they started as legal teams to write the policy draft, okay, that you kind of have in front of you. And two lawyers, Neola and two sets of lawyers looked at it and drafted the policy based on the legislation that they have, okay? Then, the biennium budget happened a couple weeks ago on a Monday, and there were lots of educators in the room. And they started kind of talking or asking about this, and it kind of a ripple went through the room and people had lots of questions. Well, after that conversation, the governor's office actually called Neola and said, now, wait a minute. What's this policy that you have drafted? We do not like it. Like, this is not what we intended. And Neola politely said, I'm sorry, that's not what you intended, but this is what it says. And the governor's office said, no, we meant for it to be, cell phones are completely not allowable in any way, form, or function in schools. And Neola said, that's not what it says. And so what you have in front of you is the legal interpretation of what the legislation wrote. I just tell you that because technically this policy that we're getting ready to talk about and perhaps approve does technically not have to go into effect until January 1st. Most school districts, and in fact, across this region, we all agreed as superintendents, we are not starting the year without this policy in place. That would be a disaster to try to change that midstream. So we are all, when I say collective regionally, we are putting this policy in place and updating student code of conduct, hopefully before the start of the year. But I say that with the caveat, a lot can change from now to January. So we could be in a very similar spot where we approve a policy. And now that the legislators know, oops, we weren't quite clear in what we wrote. There is the possibility that between now and January, they come back and say, let's try again. This is what it's going to look like. If you think about religious instruction time, remember we talked about that and we had it all nice and tied a bow on. And then they said, no, that's not what we meant. We're going to insert some things here. I would fully expect that between now and January, the legislation comes back to this and puts their hands in it again, to maybe tighten it up a little bit. But with that said, we have, I feel like, the obligation to our community and our schools to start out with a policy in place that is very clear for our students for cell phones that will then impact the student code of conduct. And so that's why we're here today, is to start the year off on the strongest foot that we can with the legal interpretation of what the legislation wrote, albeit that it might not be their intention. So with that said, I'm going to give you the synopsis. You're welcome to read in detail, but I'm going to give you the synopsis. The choices were, can you possess your phone or can you use your phone during the school day? We chose, you can possess your phone, meaning it can be on your person, it can be on your body, it can be in your laptop, it can be in your pocket. So we said, yes, you can possess it. We're not going to be the cell phone police and personal communication devices includes watches. Can you imagine if we were trying to say, take your watch off, take your watch off. So you can possess it, okay? Then the next caveat for the policy was, what is the instructional day? If you can use it, what is the instructional day? Of course, they did not define that for us. And that is where I think the legislation kind of missed it. They thought, oh, the instructional day is every time you're in the building. It's not quite that easy, right? So we have grounded our definition of instructional day in the same way that we take attendance. So let me explain that to you. In attendance, in the do, they say what constitutes the instructional day that you can count as minutes of attendance for the day. That was the best way we knew to anchor it. We weren't reinventing the wheel. We weren't coming up with our own definition. Minimum hours and what counts. This is on the do. They define the instructional day for you. So that is how we are defining the instructional day. What that means is class periods count. So when I'm in class, learning and teaching with a teacher, or in an environment where I'm learning and teaching with a teacher, perhaps that's the gym, perhaps that's the auditorium, that is the instructional day. It will not include, meaning we will not eliminate use of a phone during class time, during lunch, very similar to our previous policy.
During class change.
During class change, excuse me, I think I said class time, yeah. Hall time and cafeteria. It was very similar to the policy that we drafted. Now, the difference is we did add a little bit of there's an extra layer of that. As you know, in 712, we provided, I call them the shoe pouches or the calculator pouches on the back of the door, okay? Children, the expectation will be that children in 7 through 12 put those phones in the pouch, okay? That is the expectation. Now, if a kid has it in their pocket, we're not gonna be like, get it out of your pocket. But the expectation, we're gonna try to get in that practice, is putting it on the back of the door. If you have your phone, I don't care if it's in your locker, in your backpack, in your purse, in your back, it needs to be on silent, right? So it's not vibrating and buzzing. We don't need phones in the lockers going beeping and all that. Every phone has to be on silent when it's in the building or your communication device. The one difference is, based on our previous policy that we drafted collectively, is that in the classroom, because it is instructional time, going back to that definition, there are no phones. There is not the ability of the teacher to say, get out your phone and let's use this for instructional purposes. We did that for 2 reasons. Clarity for teachers and very clear delineations about what is instructional time and what is not, right? And we also felt that because they have their student devices, they should be able to do anything instructionally that they need on that device. We talked about different scenarios of listening to music. You can do that through your headphones with your device, right? We talked about QR codes. Again, you can do that on your device. And also the reason is children are smart, right? If you leave your computer at home and you can use your cell phone, we will have lots of children forgetting their device, right? And again, we want to make something that is very, very easy to hold each other accountable for. And for principals and for teachers, the ease is when you're in class, there are no phones, use your student device. During hall breaks, during cafeteria, a little bit more I'm gonna call social time, you can use your phone appropriately as long as it's not a disruption to the building. So that is in a nutshell. There is one other caveat I want to draw your attention to. It does say, and I think legislation anticipated parents' concerns about safety. In the event of a safety issue, Alice, active shooter, something of that, it does say that children may use their phone as long as it does not interfere with crisis and emergency management. So if a child had their phone on their being, on silent, and something happened, they could contact or text their parent as long as it didn't interfere with other protocols. So that is in the policy from legislators. So essentially, a child can bring their personal communication device. It must be on silent. Ideally in 7 through 12, they put it in the pocket on the back of the door when they enter, and instructional time is sacred time. Teachers cannot say, go get your cell phone and let's use it for X. We have actually added some additional loaners to our high schools and our junior highs to anticipate that they might need that. We also are working with our curriculum department and our tech department to make sure we're really good on our filtering while also following our Senate bill and our Go Guardian and our federal requirements, but making sure that we are being as proactive as we can for teachers to make sure that the sites that they need for research, particularly like CCP classes and advanced classes, are open and accessible. So there isn't a need to use their phone. So in a nutshell, that is the policy at hand. It's not a lot different than what we drafted, except for in the instructional period, the teacher no longer has the ability to say, let's go grab your phone for instruction. We feel like their student device can do that. Also, I know a question was about consequences.
Yeah.
What does that look like? You have a flow chart there in front of you. It's got little gray boxes on it. You know, I love a good flow chart. Mr. Marshall last week met with administrators and had a very collaborative discussion about what this could look like to make sure that we were all on the same page. I think we all agreed, and I think it was very refreshing to hear, our goal is never to suspend a child over a phone, right? Now, there is a fine line, particularly with all children, where sometimes you get into the insubordination phone debate, but our goal is not to suspend a child for a phone. It's a teachable moment. How do we use technology in an effective way that is professional, whether you're a student in a professional environment and so be. So we have a flow chart here. We will be giving this to principals. Principals agreed to this. They actually were the collective creators of this in K-12. So it will start with a verbal warning from the teacher, right? We feel like that is appropriate. Now, we also talked about, is that one verbal warning? Is that 2? Is that 3? We're not going to get in the verbal count list checklist, right? But we all know some kids, it's only going to take 1. Some kids, maybe Kelly needs twice. Kelly, put your phone away. Come on now, let's put your phone away, right? So there'll be a verbal warning. At that point, after the verbal warnings, whether it's one or whether it's two, there is a parent communication from the teacher to the parent via Parent Square that says, hey, we had a little issue with the phone, right? Can you remind your child that instructional time is sacred? We don't use our phone. They're always allowed to use it in the hallway or the cafeteria. We want to get in that very good reciprocal rapport with parents to say, hey, my teacher is just letting you know, we didn't escalate, but we had a little bit of a conversation about your phone. If that does not help the situation, there are two options, okay? And I'll explain why there are two options. One is a teacher-based detention. I gotta fix my spelling on that before we send that out. I apologize for that. The teacher can give a teacher-based detention. Now, you might say, why is that not a universal? Well, contractually, negotiated agreements, you can't require a teacher to stay after their contractual day, but some teachers use that because they're grading papers, they're planning, they're there anyway, right? So if a teacher has that in their tool belt and they're okay to stay after their contractual day and they want to do that, they can issue a teacher-based detention with a parent communication attached to that. Hey, little Johnny stayed after today because I had to give him 2 warnings on Thursday. We still had a problem. I'm going to give him a teacher-based detention. Or if you don't have that in your tool belt, it's an office-based referral, okay? It says school options be consistent. What I mean by that, this is a more ongoing conversation with our administrators around discipline. We don't have the same discipline options on both sides of town. And what I mean by that is East has Friday school and Saturday school. West does not utilize those. Some schools have 1 hour detentions, some have 2 hour detentions, some have 3 hour detentions. We have the opportunity in a further, more robust conversation, even outside of cell phones, to align those, right? So what we mean by that is the school will use the current options that they have in place. But again, our goal this upcoming year is to tighten those and to make sure that those are more aligned and equal on the east side of town and west side of town, or junior highs to high school. And again, always that parent communication. So this is kind of the normal flow. Very realistically, I'm picking on a high school kid or a junior high kid, they have 7 teachers. If you have a kid who has a real problem with their phone, God love them, they might get 7 parent communications via Parent Square in one day because, little Addison just can't put her phone away. But I think we want that parent partnership. We want the parent to know early on from the teacher, and then if it gets to it, from the school and the administrator to know, hey, the phone is a problem. In the policy, this is not our ad, but in the policy, it is stated from Neola, you can lose your phone privileges, meaning you do not bring your phone to school at all. We are not going to be in the confiscation business because from my own experience, that can tend to go sideways very quickly, right? You push a kid into a corner, they come out swinging sometimes. It's their personal property. And there is some liability for administrators and teachers when you start confiscating things. So we don't want to be in the confiscation building or a business. We want to use it as a teachable moment. We want to teach them to be responsible adults. I think the next step of this, if this policy goes in place, is also for me to discuss with the association leadership about how adults should model the policy that we have in place for children, right? We're not going to have some hard and fast rules, but we want to model and be professionals in our own environment. And so if the instructional classroom is sacred, we as adults need to honor that as well and use our phones in a professional manner when there are more natural breaks during the day. So if this is approved, I will then have that conversation with the association so that we can model and be professional in our own cell phone usage during the day. Any questions about the cell phone piece?
Yes, I do.
Mhm.
Now, I think this went through first and second reading before, right?
It didn't, a different
did-
policy, a different policy. It was the one that we collaboratively invested with our community.
Yeah,
This
the
is
other
the
one,
new
yeah, so this
version.
is the new
This
version.
is the new version.
So it's not gonna go through our normal process.
It will go through one read
Uh-huh.
because of the timing of the school year, and we are allowed to do that. There's nothing legal that requires 2 reads. So we will rescind that 2 read policy for just today,
For this one.
just for that one, and the next policy of 511 that we're gonna talk about.
Okay, yeah, I'm okay with this. I know it doesn't have anything to do with the community, it's only have to do with parents and the students, so
What,
I don't mind.
so how much is a teacher going to have like a verbal warning? So Addison goes to class and she has her phone and the teacher says, you need to put your phone away. And she's like, not really, it's my personal property. I mean, how much arguing are we going to do?
We're not.
Yeah.
And what I mean by
I'm worried
that
about
is,
that.
and I
Our
think
teachers are gonna be
we talked a lot about that with our administrators, right? And every teacher, you know, you have to know kind of you have to know your students and you have to know kind of where that line is. And what I mean by that is if you say to a child, hey, need you to put your phone up, and the kid's like, yeah, not happening, right? Don't engage. Just call the office, get the principal down there, have them take the kid, write the office referral. You know, you can put the ball in somebody else's court to handle instead of having that debate in front. Now, 9 times out of 10, most kids aren't gonna do that,
Right.
you know? Beginning of the year when you don't have the relationship, it looks a little different, right? Because you're still getting to know your kids. But I think most of the time the teacher will be able to de-escalate the situation. But if not, don't escalate, call the office, go get, you know, write the administrator referral and say, hey, this was taking a turn that we didn't want to deal with in front of the collective group. The other thing that we talked about, which is also in the policy, if parents need to reach their children during instructional time, call the office, right? And so I think the next step of that is equipping our office staff to know you're probably going to get more calls than you might have, right? Because parents need to communicate with their children maybe during the instructional period. And to just make sure that, you know, we have really good customer service when we answer the phone to make sure that, we might be a little bit bombarded, particularly at the beginning of the year, but that we're here to answer and get those messages to families in as quick as way as possible. And I think that will be more of a K-6 world than a 7 through 12 world, but just want to make sure that our front office staff are aware maybe for the volume of calls that might come in the beginning.
Is there gonna be parent communication from?
There
the
sure
parents
is.
On this, because
Yeah.
some of the parents are going to.
We are waiting for approval. Betsy actually was in my inbox. Betsy drafted it last night. So once we have approval, we will get that out. And then administrators will be reinforcing again that, you know, you can get a loaner, but you're not going to use your phone during instructional time. Charge your devices, put them in the pouches. We're going to be reinforcing those good practices and procedures. But I do think it will help our teachers to know there's a very clear line between instructional time and then class changes in the lunchroom. And again, if we approve this come action time, I just say I would be prepared that there might be some additional changes between now and January, because I think the governor's office was not anticipating the ambiguity that perhaps they didn't intentionally leave in the policy. And legislator, educator, right?
Well, because what we were told at the policy thing last week in Columbus, the conference was.
Yep.
Absolutely no cell phones used during the day at all. They can't even be in the building.
Mhm.
That's what came out of the budget. And so I text Dr. Whiteley and she's like, that's not what legal just.
Yeah,
said."
so what legal has done.
And that's where I think where the phone calls started going to the governor's offices, all the board and superintendent sitting in that room.
I think most of our surrounding districts will be in a very similar place to us. I know yesterday I had an exchange with the superintendent. And he said, I just want to make sure we're not on a limb here by ourselves, or you go in this direction. And we were going in a very, very similar direction. There might be some communities who I think are further along in their conversation with their communities about no cell phones at all. But I think that's a very different conversation and a longer engagement period with your community. But you might see some of those, particularly north, I think is more kind of farther along in those conversations. So there might be some of those, but I don't anticipate that being heavy in our region. So that's that. Again, we'll vote on it come time, but I wanted to give a little context before we put that in front of. The next piece is to what Isaac alluded, which is 5111. We did a little bit of this with AGs last time, where we added about students, staff members who do not live in the district and their parents attending. Working with legal, and Adam was part of that conversation as well, just to really make sure there's no liability. In addition to that AG change, we need to do 2 things. One, and this is really about, because of funding, right? About how you collect money on a student and things of that nature. We need to put a resolution in, which I copied for you, that basically says a resolution to adopt a policy permitting the attendance of children who are of employees. We're only talking about staff members, children who do not reside in the district. You have to have a resolution to allow that if it's not in your collective bargaining, okay? The other piece to that, besides this adopting the resolution, if you look at the policy that Isaac mentioned, it's actually green, it's letter L. Letter L would simply be added to say a child whose parent is a full-time employee of the Lakota Local School District shall be admitted to the schools of the Lakota School District upon request of the parent. So it basically says that regardless of where the parent resides, if they reside outside of Lakota schools, that they have the ability as a staff member. You know, you want to call it a perk of being a staff member, is that you can bring your child to Lakota Local Schools. We really needed to adopt this resolution and adjust this policy just to make sure there was no liability to the district, because we don't have them in the collective bargaining unit. And we want to make sure that there is clarity around some of those collection of student tuition or student funds that we collect from the state. So this just makes it ironclad. The AG is there, but I think this just tightens it up so that there's no liability.
And they are already priority in our open enrollment policy, and we already have staff members who reside at the district
Correct.
who are taking advantage of that through our.
This is
current
really
open
just a,
enrollment
this is
policy.
just super tight way to, because it doesn't, a lot of time it lives in collective bargaining units, right? We don't have that. Although it does say that they get priority in our collective bargaining unit, it actually doesn't speak to the fact that they can as a staff member's child. So this is, again, the AG is there, but this just makes it, this just from a legal point of policy and that resolution, just make sure that there's no loophole or legality that we have missed.
And we had a lot
So
of,
this is where, sorry.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
This is where I have my problem and I have my questions, because when I saw this, I pulled the policy up and I read through it, trying to find out, I don't know, when was the AG done?
Last board meeting. Our AGs don't have to be board approved. We talked about it in the last board meeting and in my last update.
Okay, so my technicalities here is, the parent can be outside the school.
Only
district.
a staff member.
I mean,
Staff.
the staff member can be outside the school district,
Mhm.
okay? But where I have a challenge is on, if you go to B, optional tuition free education, if you go to section B.
Mhm.
Yeah. The exception here is foreign exchange students participating in a bona fide foreign exchange program,
Mhm.
or residents of foreign nations who request admission as foreign exchange student, or the student is a non-Ohio, okay?
Mhm.
US resident admitted under exchange program.
So that is our current policy. Nothing has changed in that.
Okay, so this student, first of all, I don't know who the student is. I don't know who the parents are. I have no idea, but I just want to go into the technicalities and how this might impact our taxpayers.
Mhm.
Okay, or the community. This student is coming from out of state. Am I correct?
Well, are we talking about B? Or are we talking about,
This student, first of all, let's clarify that.
Okay.
The student is coming from out of state.
the current student that came into question regarding the policy lives in northern Kentucky with their staff member
Okay,
parent?
great. So that is out of state.
Right, but B is pertaining to international foreign exchange.
Yes, but the question I have is, I know we can do that for somebody from out of state if it is on exchange program. So this student is coming from out of state, who pays their tuition? Because the state of Ohio is not going to be.
Correct, we're not charging tuition for anybody in A through I. And actually A through L now. So foreign exchange students do not pay tuition to come
For exchange,
for foreign exchange.
yes,
Mhm.
but this student is coming from out of state. Doesn't the state pay tuition for every child in?
We get the state fund per student.
Okay,
And
so-
they would not, in this case, that we would not be receiving that. That is correct.
okay, so we're not receiving that. Who takes that responsibility for that fee?
We do.
Why? I think that's a violation of our policy.
No, because we have a series of, so we don't charge tuition for anybody, Isaac, period.
No, but the state pays. that
We have the state fund per pupil.
funding for
Mhm.
for each child,
Mhm.
and that is why it says that the e-voucher says the fund follow the child to whichever school district he has for open enrollment. Am I right?
The funds fall,
The child,
okay,
yes, the state, the fund, the child.
The state fund for-
The state
State
fund
fund, right.
can follow the child wherever they goes, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, so this child is coming from out of state.
Mhm.
That means Ohio state is not funding this child,
correct.
correct?
Mhm.
That means somebody is gonna
Yeah, the state of Ohio does have a bit of
For out of state.
reciprocity. Reciprocity.
Okay.
I didn't say that right.
Okay.
But they have that with secondary education. They do not have that with K-12 education. So this is the first time we've ran into, we were initially focused on policy 5113.
Yeah.
But that's where this shifted into 5111 is because of the 5113 is only pertaining to in-state per law. 5111, which that was a learn for all of us, I believe. 5111 is what pertains to all school, all student, period.
So what I don't understand is the student coming from out of state and it's not on exchange program. Where is the funding coming from? For that child, that particular child?
We are not receiving state funding for that child.
Okay, so who takes that burden for that child?
We do. Just like we do with foreign exchange
The
students.
cost.
Yeah, we absorb the cost, just like we do with foreign exchange students, just like we do with
Yeah, our
military
funding would go up to
families.
this.
I think it's a question of, do you believe that the benefits of having our staff being able to bring their student to Lakota outweighs the differential of the $2,000 we might have gotten from the state for another child that we're not getting for that child? You know, Adam speaks often about his interest of his sons being here. I think this gives our staff an opportunity to experience the Lakota education as not only a staff member, but as a parent, which I think provides value. It allows them to align their breaks, and I would imagine would result in less absenteeism because you're on the same schedule. And it's a benefit of being a staff member and a recruiting tool if we can allow our staff to bring their students here, is how I perceive
And just
this.
for scale, right? Because in my past life, this was a very different number. Right, very different number in the district that I came from. We only have 5 staff members who live outside of the state. Okay, so either in Kentucky, Indiana, 5 at 2,000. This is the only staff member that we know living out of state who is bringing their child here. So just for comparison, we are not talking mass numbers. In fact, we have the ability right now to have more foreign exchange students than we do in this particular instance. But because we have this one particular instance, we wanted to make sure that we have no liability. And so that's where this resolution came from, and the adjustment to the policy, because although the AG is there, it's like 99% liability free. And Adam had some really good questions to our legal team that we wanted to make sure that it's just zero, that number is zero. That's where these two pieces come in. So it's a very, very small number. And we had a very good, robust discussion of, you know, Central Ohio is located very close to some states, right? Indiana, Kentucky, I mean, the airport's in Kentucky, for goodness sake, right? So as a parent who's a staff member, if you wanted to drive your child 45 minutes and bring your child to school with you, that we would allow that to do that in a tuition-free manner in that instance, because you are a staff member. We would not open that up to, in fact, open enrollment will be gone eventually after this year's rising 8th graders kind of work their way through.
So my other question here is, so we're amending this policy, but we're not going through first, second read before we
Correct.
adopt.
Correct.
Okay, that's why I have my problem.
Okay.
I have my problem with that because for transparency's sake, that is not, I don't think we should. So.
I have a question along those lines too. So I understand the rescinded policy for the cell phone
Mhm.
because that came after the fact, right? Why is this falling under the rescinded? Did something change? Did
The student's personal home life situation changed, and they would like to enroll their student before the start of school. And so we're trying to be accommodating for that staff member and make sure that again, the AG allows that. But again, for the policy pieces, we wanted to make sure that there was no liability for that student to be able to start school.
So the student would be able to start under the AG.
Yes, with some liability to the district.
We're trying to get no
We're
liability.
trying to get to 0 liability.
Can you give me some more information about what the liability is?
Well, without the resolution in place to do that and the policy to reflect that, we technically don't have permission to take that student without tuition.
So that's what my question.
Now, we could shoot, I mean, there is the option to say, we hold on this and we can enroll the student under the AG, but there is some liability between now and August 18th that we would have.
And the
No.
tuition would then, where would the tuition come from?
The
If
parent.
The
the
parent,
parent
we
would pay,
and we would have to decide what that tuition is and what percentage that would be. Is that 100%, 50%, 25%? Again, a lot of times that lives in collective bargaining units. And tuition is a bigger discussion on much bigger fronts. I've been in places that charge it, I've been in places that have not. But I think because we are dealing with one child and not multiple, and we can always revisit this as well, if this becomes a growing trend, I don't think it will. But again, we could enroll the child under the AG, but again, there is some liability if we wanted to wait till that.
but what I'm hearing you say is we could decide what that liability is, so we could decide it's zero. Right.
If we have put this in place, the liability is zero. If the
But
resolution,
under the AG,
under the AG, there's a slim
There's
of
no
it
liability.
but it's up to us what that is.
Well,
Well, liability is when somebody calls you on it to say, well, what are you doing? You know, I mean, you're not following your policy, your resolution. So if we got called up on that, the next discussion would be,
Here's
what
our
do we
AG.
do in that situation?
I didn't think we had the ability to enroll them because of Kentucky, because we didn't have anything within current policy. It wasn't about they would have to pay tuition. We don't have the ability to take them in per policy. That's why it got stopped.
It's both. I think there's the tuition discussion if we wanted it.
Well,
And
that's
the ability
different,
to enroll.
but then just the ability to enroll, all of our policies reference Ohio today. And that's why, you know, the staff thing to do this, you can do this with staff, you can do this with a resolution. But even if the parent said, I want to pay tuition, we didn't have policy to allow for the enroll. So by changing the AG, we still were hung on policy.
We wanted to tighten up that liability piece.
good, but yeah.
99% clean, but we wanted it 100% clean, and it would take the resolution and the policy to do that, not just the AG.
So I understand that there's a situation that is causing this to come up right now. But given that this is a considerable change to policy, does it make sense? I think I'd like to make a motion that we table this and take this to the policy committee for
Okay.
review to talk through these issues.
Okay.
Because I think it's a far-reaching one. And then we can operate under what we feel the right liability is with the AGs.
Okay.
So
But that means we can't enroll the student.
Uh,
That means we can't enroll the student.
we could with
We can
liability.
I think that's
Liability.
where I'm gonna rely on the
Liability.
administration to assess the risk, but I'd like to make a motion that we table this and put it to committee.
Well, what we could do is we could
We could do a,
schedule a policy meeting. And then we could have.
But this way we can figure out how to handle it, but there's a motion on the table. Is there a?
Oh,
second?
yeah, there,
Second.
so we.
Now we can discuss the motion.
sorry, yes, you're right. Thank you for that.
So
So,
your motion is to table
E
item F,
E and F.
E and F? What is your,
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm clear on exactly.
E and F and send it to the policy committee, like for review, and not have this tabled under the exception that we're doing to the bylaws. And was that A?
So you wouldn't even do a first reading today, you would just table this entirely and not have it be a first read of this policy at this meeting?
Typically, we don't send it to first read without the policy. committee review. And I think this discussion, in my mind, this discussion opens a can of worms that we haven't fully thought through. So I'm empathetic that we have somebody who's trying to enroll, but I don't know the intention of why this was drafted the first way. And so when I sit on the policy committee, the first thing I'm asking is trying to understand the history of, was there intention to explicitly exclude Kentucky or not? And so let's do that work and come with answers instead of trying to rush this in. I'm empathetic that they're trying to join, but this is opening up a lot of discussion.
So with that said, and based on liability, then I would suggest that we hold on the enrollment of the student.
For me, I feel like I think we're doing a disservice to an educator in our district because they had a personal life change.
But I think to your point.
well, let
is
me,
The timeline.
what I always try to do is no matter what we're hearing, try to figure out solutions, right?
Speak one.
So in order for us to be able to allow for an enrollment of a kid, we have to have item E.
Correct, we have to have the resolution.
We don't have to have item F.
Well,
Now, if the goal is to hold everything, okay, then that would be E and F. That would be a table of E and F.
Current practice, correct? E is what we have had in the past.
E, we've not had any student from Kentucky.
correct.
Out of state.
Out of state.
No need for, out of state,
Out
that's
of
why
state.
my concern.
Yes, we have in-state, but not out of state.
So.
Okay.
So we can do E. We could do E, which would speak to the resolution allowing for a staff member to enroll their student. Then table F, you could do that to go to policy to review that specific policy, but that would allow the enrollment center to proceed if we was worried about timeline. If you want to go back full on, take it all back, review, go through. You could do a policy. I believe this is caveated with in that, because we've looked at the ORC way too much. I believe that's caveated with you have to have this by the first day of school.
Correct.
So
It is.
that would mean that then if we wanted to do that and then do two read, we would then have to schedule a policy, which we could do. And then we would have to have a read and a second meeting read,
Does today
And
count?
when I,
or,
Meeting.
Correct.
or this item B would have to be on there again. To just be in effect at that special meeting. As well, that would get you away from the two.
We are all here, so we could just do a read. I mean, typically we don't send
We
it
could
to
do
the
it.
first read, but we could do a first read here.
You could,
okay, my question on that is this, if you do, how do you do a first read on a policy that you have not drafted? It has not gone through the policy committee to discuss it and draft it.
Well,
But you are doing a read on what?
I hear you. I mean, I think it's a one line change to
It's a one-line
policy.
addition, yeah.
So,
we have a policy.
I don't want to speak for the policy, but my perspective on policy would have been like, okay, we'll take this to the board for the first read. So it's pretty,
Pretty
like, I don't think there was a lot of revolve this. I think
And it might
this
just be
discussion
KP,
has been
like,
robust enough
come
for us
up
to
with
go
a
back to the
different
committee to try to answer some of these questions for the second read.
And hasn't it, I thought that, hasn't there been discussion around this, like with the AG and such at policy?
No, it would be a phone call.
Okay,
this policy was canceled Friday.
gotcha.
Yeah, we just had a phone call and updates. It was in all of the updates the last several weeks.
In my opinion, what I see here, that's my analysis of this.
We had some
From B
phone
to F.
discussion with the parent and then some follow-ups.
B to F is
B
new.
to F is,
All right, so we've got a motion to table something right now.
okay, yes.
Is that,
Well, we need to be specific on if it's here.
is that E or, because see, this is where I want everybody to kind of hear our variables. So our variable is you could do a resolution to table,
Everything.
then you,
Well, that's what's on the
well, then
table.
you could do a resolution to amend the agenda. To then call that a first read, which then I don't think the table makes sense. Then I would say pull off of the table, amend the resolution to do a first read of policy 5111. You would pull off E. You wouldn't take action on that because that's going to be captured with F. And then when we come back at the second meeting, then we would do both. Because one's essentially the other. Or, it's been a while since we've had to do this one. Or you could take action on E, which would then give the enrollment center the ability to go. So you could table E, we could just table E, and then amend the agenda. That would make better sense. Table E, amend the agenda to change F
To a first read.
to a first read.
So if you table E though, that's the resolution, right? Then we don't.
Well, if we're going back to a policy to then a special meeting anyway, it's going to be captured.
So here's
So
my,
there's several options we really have.
well, my
I'm not,
concern is we need a policy meeting and a special meeting before school starts.
Before next Thursday.
Next Thursday, we have two people that now have limited availability.
Who's on
I
policy?
only have limited availability during the school day. I
Yeah,
can
Doug
meet
Yeah,
and-
we
in the
can meet, we
evening.
can meet in the evenings, no problem.
But you're gone 3 days a week still?
No, I can meet in the evening every night.
I don't even know.
You two are policy.
Yeah, we're policy.
I don't know what the motion is.
So it was, I
We're
understand
trying to
the
figure this
motion was to table E and F.
So is the question, is the discussion about tuition free?
My issue is less about the policy.
Mhm.
I agree with the language in the policy, and actually I have very few questions after my questions today were answered. My issue is I don't want to get into the business of rescinding policies in order to push other policies through at the last minute. I understand there's an emergency,
Yeah.
but did the emergency arise in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah.
If so, how did we talk through that? I mean,
Not the last 3 weeks.
there may have been phone calls that happened. No one on the policy, well,
I didn't get it.
I didn't get a phone call. I had,
These have been
I
in the
read
updates
this.
though, correct? The last couple of.
The AG.
And I read that.
Yeah,
And
I read the
them too.
updates.
Yep.
And now I have questions, which is why I'm asking them.
I think the biggest discussion in this resolution and in this is the tuition free piece, right? Because that's what it's allowed, right? And I do think tuition is a large discussion, right? But if you read the first paragraph of the resolution and you read L and where it falls, you're talking about allowing students, children who do not reside in the district to be a tuition free situation. In the past, it's been kind of cleaner because they all lived in the state of Ohio.
Yes.
This one is a little bit of an anomaly because they live.
That's
in
what hit the hangout.
the northern
Yes.
Kentucky line,
That's
which is
why-
why I bumped it from 511.
That's why we haven't talked about this. Open enrollment's not new.
That's why.
That's why we're, now,
Now.
now something else to know, because when digging through this, we got the information. Currently, today, we have 64 staff open enrolled students of about 150 open enrolled total. The reason for that was we did have around 250. We then put it into place last year where we reduced that back to only grandfathering it in 7th and up. So let's say that 64, 64, 64, that's going to be the number indefinitely for staff. If that's the truth, then this year there's no open enrolled 7th graders.
Correct.
Fiscal 26.
Right.
Next year, there would be no open enrolled 8th graders.
Right.
Then no 9th, then no 10th, then no 11th. It'd be phased out. So then once we got through 5 more years, then there would only be 64 if that's how many staff was. That open enrolled is just, you don't live in the district
And your staff.
and your staff. That would be,
In
once
3
we
years,
get
it
to
would be
that
just
point,
that.
that's all we would be allowing. That's correct.
Okay, I'm gonna rescind my motion and then make another motion, which is what you said, to amend the agenda to be a first read of item at policy number 5111.
But then the
And
motion,
then-
you don't need to, time out. We don't need, we still got the second on. We don't need to rescind. You would just make the motion to table would only be item E.
So he's
But
amending
he's
the
not,
motion.
he's not wanting to take.
So we table E and then
You would
First read.
table,
F.
you would table E, then we'll take a vote. Then in theory, one thing at a time, then you could do a motion to amend the agenda to change F. At that point, could you do F and D, or would that even matter? D is the cell phone policy. I'm just throwing it out.
No, not D, like.
Okay, we're done there.
I think we're
Okay.
good.
Then F would be a amended to a first read.
Where,
So you're,
where does that leave?
we're tabling E.
Table E.
We're making F a first read. Is the motion. And then we have a policy meeting and a
We would
special
need to have a
meeting.
policy
to-
and a
to
special
approve
meeting
E and F.
before,
Assuming. it comes out
what's the
policy.
first day of physical school?
13th.
So we need to have a policy and a meeting before the 13th,
Thursday.
before, so at least by the 12th. Preferably morning,
the
so that
13th.
the team would have time to make sure
So
all
by
the paperwork stuff's fine.
So we do that by the 14th.
Yeah.
A
Thursday the
special, a
14th.
policy meeting
Yeah,
plus a
14th.
special meeting
By the 12th.
by the 12th.
Because it has to be per O R
Which is
C,
next Tuesday.
the first day of school.
First day of school is the 14th, but they're gonna need time to enroll if it passes, so.
Oh,
really,
but yeah, the theory, the
but
morning of the
12th.
13th.
The 12th would be helpful, because the person's
It
gonna
would
need to
be.
schedule.
But you could do weekend, you could do,
We can also do some prep time ahead.
we just
Talk
can't
with the
do,
school
we just
because
can't do
we're going
today
to
because we need a
create
24-hour
schedule
window.
of some sort that could be handed to that child on that day. I mean,
Not until they're in.
I have a question.
we can't have a tentative schedule.
Well, technically it doesn't flow. I mean, the
Yeah,
problem is
the
they're
way-
not,
The administrator
And
could sit down and make a
I
tentative.
will
schedule.
not. She won't be able to make a meeting.
But
Now. Based on the agenda we have today, we're still in the discussion part of the original motion, second tape. Based on what we have on the agenda today, the only thing that's critical of at minimum 4 vote is item B today, which if we did have a special before Tuesday or before, item B would not be on that agenda. On that agenda would only be a read to.
Correct. So B would only apply to
C and D.
Correct.
C and D, yeah, correct.
I do think we need compliance officers in place before the start of the school year, just in case.
Yeah.
There were any issues for reporting purposes.
Okay, so before we restate what the motion is. Am I hearing that the motion on the table is a motion to table item E? If that's the case, then we can step through the next piece. To table item E, okay.
Hold on. The motion was seconded was for E and F. Are we
Well,
rescinding that motion?
I think we're going to.
Well, I don't think we really said it was E and F, maybe.
Because it was already seconded.
It was said E and F, and okay, I didn't hear it was E and F
Yeah.
on the motion. I didn't, I
Yeah.
thought it was
Yeah.
to table. E and F,
Yes.
okay.
And so then
So
Doug
I
had
can-
mentioned.
I can
Rescind that, rescind that.
And then I'd like to issue the motion to table E and amend the agenda for F to be a first read.
Can we do that as separate motions, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, separate motions, so table just E. Sorry.
To table.
E.
I actually appreciate this happening without a audience clear full of people. It's been, last time we've had something like this, it's been that way.
Do we
Okay, so
need to move F?
Doug moved,
So we need a second for that motion.
Doug moved
So we just.
To
did the
table E.
first Motion?
to table E. We rescinded that
rescinded
one.
But we, okay.
But my question is, do we need to move item F to really be item B? Because once you rescind, once you do policy 0131 rescission, if it's after it, it's going to be included. We need to do the first read of policy 5111, then we need to rescind policy 0131
Well, the
and
action.
approve.
Essentially, if you table the action, it's gonna be scratched.
Right, but this first read, you've just rescinded the policy to do the second read.
Just for this meeting.
Right, but this is a first read. Which
So
we just
we'll move it in the agenda.
This one
So the
gets
second
tabled.
step would be,
This-
Well, you can still do a first read.
we would
Well, we
just move.
just rescinded it. The-
Then we-
We
There's a
haven't
lot
voted
of
yet.
things in that policy.
Right,
There's a
but
lot of
do you
things
wanna
there.
make this be just to be cleaner? To do the approval,
So-
or to do the first read
Yeah.
to be,
We can, that's going,
Motion, so once we get through E.
yeah, let's get through E first.
And then we'll make, I hear.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Second. Any more discussion? We'll step through this very slow.
Yeah, I have a question. I know we appreciate our employees, our staff. And I know it's good for us to do what is possible and convenient to accommodate their need. But are we doing all this? Because the technicalities to me right now is not clear. Are we just doing all this to ensure we get that done without going through the technicalities and the legal aspect of it?
the technicality is tuition.
Well, again, this is debating the policy. The motion is just to have it reviewed in policy committee, where I think that is, it does give it the attention.
Yeah.
And then when we come back as a second read, we can have the right
What
conversation.
about adopting policy number 5111?
No, right now, the motion is that we're going to table E. With the intention that we will not be taking 511 today, but actually just doing a first read.
We will
on
not
it,
approve
And then
it.
send
There'll be
that
another
back
motion
to the
next.
policy committee.
That's why I said we'll go slow and we'll step through because this is getting a little,
And
Then
just for
everything.
discussion purposes, I'm sorry.
Then, are we not supposed to amend the agenda
That's-
before we do?
we will
Yeah,
next.
That's
We
coming.
will next.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not out of order just yet.
So I don't know if this
I
is.
meant, I thought you, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know if this is where this discussion goes, but the only thing that is going to the policy committee on this policy is to
Is L.
change this one line,
Correct, L,
just this one line, correct?
correct.
Correct. But it would be between the first and second read. So we're having the first read of this policy.
Yep.
The intention would be,
Right,
Yeah, the
we're
first-
not redoing this whole policy, it's just letter L.
that's would be going back to the.
And again, I would argue also with tabling E, that if there is not an objection to actually ultimately moving forward, resolutions don't typically go to policy committee prior to coming to the board. So I feel like we have the potential to go ahead and vote on the resolution today. And then simply have the policy go to 5111, which helps with us. And I don't believe that would necessarily require us to have the emergency meeting because it would give the district the ability to do the enrollment at this point.
And so the second read could be at the August meeting.
August 18th, it could be.
So you would still have to have a policy meeting, but we wouldn't need a special meeting if we approve the resolution today, is that right?
Correct.
I guess
Yeah,
that
that was part of what I said earlier was,
Is something to
To enroll,
consider because that
have
is
to have-
not a break in protocol as far as how we.
I guess
typically
my
pass
question would
resolutions.
be, the resolution and L are essentially the same thing. I mean, if you look at the first
But
paragraph,
what I'm hearing is it's not an objection to what's actually being done, it's the objection
Of
to
the
breaking
timing.
protocol.
I got you, okay.
And so if that is,
That's
if
fair.
I'm interpreting what I'm hearing correctly, I think there's an opportunity to do both, but if I am misinterpreting that.
I like,
then-
if that's truly the objection is the protocol, I like how you said that my light bulb went on. If that's true, then you're absolutely, you could approve the resolution. We could have a policy committee between now and the 18th and do the second read on the 18th. That is absolutely true. If it is a protocol of timing and how we normally do things. Now, if there is a objection to the content, that is a different question. But we could absolutely, if it's about the time of the protocol.
Yeah, for me, I also have objection on the content. Because the content has the technicality that I think is, it's not fair to taxpayers in Ohio or in my community to do what we're doing. So I have problem with that technicality as well.
As I said before, my issue was with the technicality of timing, not what's written in here, and I'm fine agreeing to
Gotcha.
the resolution so that the child can be enrolled.
Gotcha.
I'm fine with that.
So what do we do now?
So I, again, Doug would need to rescind his motion again, if he is so inclined.
What the heck?
If he is, then we could simply have a motion to have policy 511 be a first read. But that is at the will of my fellow board members.
I say
if
we
that's-
take a vote on this just to make it more harder.
yeah, well, that's what I'm kind of like, for making the minutes a little easier, can we just get to a roll call? Because, yeah, we're still in the discussion portion of our meeting. And I gotta make sure that we keep all these in the
Yeah.
right little places. So, Mr. Horton,
Yes,
this
And
is,
just to be
this is to
clarified,
table
to table
E.
E.
Okay. Ms. French,
No,
Mr. D,
No,
Ms. Casper,
No,
Ms. Schaefer.
no.
Okay, we'll
All right.
pass that one.
So now.
So E is not tabled. So now
maybe I'm
if,
confused.
So now if someone would like to make a motion to amend the agenda to separate F, which is policy 5111, out of this
have that
and have it as a first read before we take motions B, C, D, and E. or items B, D, B, C, D. So I guess I'll make that motion.
Yeah, it almost sounded like Doug was making it, but he wasn't making it.
Seems like
Okay.
we give you a break.
So what I heard is a motion to amend
The
the
agenda.
agenda, right, and as we go, agenda to
Item F to be a first read.
change F to
First read.
first read.
Mhm.
Now, what you did say. We can do it still in F. We don't need to move it up to B and then move everything down. Because just because you rescind a policy doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to do more than.
Gotcha.
So you still can do it as a first read.
Okay.
It's still fine. So that was a motion by Doug to amend the agenda to change F to first read. Do I have a?
Christina seconded, I think.
Oh, no. I'll second it.
I thought she did, I'm sorry.
Keeps me.
Gotcha.
Any discussion?
Question. Where does this come in? Are we still doing this?
Yes.
No change.
There was no change. That will still be
We're gonna do
voted on.
that.
That'll still be voted on today.
Okay.
This
So
allows the student to be enrolled, correct?
Correct.
And
that
then
is
we will do the
correct.
first read today and we'll follow our
Okay.
normal protocol and do the second read on the 18th, which just means we need a policy committee between now and the 18th.
Is that
That is correct.
So more to that. I still stand on that technicalities of what the way it's coming from out of state, I still don't support that.
understood?
You can vote that way when,
Yeah.
after our second
And
read.
probably with this, it probably makes more sense to at this point. Just vote each one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Me too.
So we had the motion second,
To amend the agenda to have policy 511 be a first read.
Mhm.
Any further discussion? Adam, please call the roll.
Mr. Ward,
Yes.
Ms. French,
Yes.
Mr. D,
No,
Ms. Casper,
Yeah.
No, just, you voted, it's fine.
Well,
Ms. Schaefer.
no.
Okay.
So,
Now we're back on agenda.
so we're not amending the agenda.
No, there's 3 yeses.
There was 3 yeses.
Oh, I missed third, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're gonna vote one at a time, right?
Well, are we done with the policy discussion?
third, yes.
Kelly,
Me.
Oh, you said yes to.
Kelly,
To amend
Amend.
first read.
yes, was
To
Kelly,
be a first read.
Christina,
Because
and
we're doing
Doug.
this.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I didn't hear, I just didn't.
I'm sorry, right? Yep, mumble. Oh,
Do we need to go back to instant replay?
no,
Okay,
that's all good.
we can.
I misunderstood, so.
Okay.
Okay, so,
So are we done with B?
yes,
Yes.
Okay, so now,
We are in action items.
I will move to action item A, approval of personnel. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
second,
Any discussion? Hearing none, Adam, please call the roll.
Ms. Casper,
Yes.
Mr. D,
yes,
Ms. French,
Yes.
Mr. Ward.
yes.
Now we have a motion to rescind policy 131 for the August.
Sorry, Ms. Schaefer. I need to get you added in. Sorry,
Yes.
I had you, sorry. Let me get an update real fast. Thank you. Got it.
Motion for policy 131 to rescind the August 5th, 2025 policy for this meeting or to rescind policy 131 for the August 5th meeting only. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Adam, please call the roll.
Ms. French,
Yes.
Ms. Casper.
Yes.
Mr. D,
no,
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer.
Yes. I'm gonna take C and D together. I
no,
might know you want them
no.
separate.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
a motion to approve all the technical changes in policies so that we change the name of our compliance officer prior to school start. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, Adam, please call the roll.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Ms. French,
Yes.
Mr. D,
Yes.
Ms. Casper,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer.
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve policy 5136, the new cell phone policy?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Adam, please call the roll.
Ms. Casper,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. D,
Yes.
Ms. French,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer.
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve resolution to adopt policy permitting the attendance of children of employees who do not reside in the school district?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Adam, please call the roll.
Ms. Casper,
Yes.
Ms. French,
Yes.
Mr. D,
No.
Mr. Horton,
No.
Ms. Schaefer.
Yes. And we have first read of policy 511. But we don't need a motion or second on that. So at this point, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, please call that.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. D,
Yes.
Ms. Casper.
Yes.
Ms. French.
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer.
Yes.
At 9:07.
Always good to keep us on.